For Hollywood, the success of a film is, unsurprisingly, generally measured in the number of tickets sold at the box office. Don't let the Hollywood marketing machine fool you, however, into thinking that only films that make a lot of money at the box office are worthy of your viewership or admiration. There are many films of questionable quality which have ended up grossing hundreds of millions at the global box office, and many great films which gross less than your local panto. It may also surprise you that some of the most celebrated and iconic movies of all time found little success at the box office upon release. So with that all in mind, I am Gareth, this is What Culture, and here are 9 great movies that inexplicably flopped at the box office. Number 9, Children of Men. Brilliant sci-fi thriller Children of Men's dark outlook and atmosphere is characterized by the superb cinematography of Alfonso Cuarón's frequent collaborator Emmanuel Lubezki, including one of the most breathtaking one-shots in cinematic history during the film's climax. But the bleakness is buoyed with strong themes of hope and redemption, all anchored by the performances from Clive Owen, Julianne Moore, and Michael Caine. Upon release, Children of Men was met with almost universal acclaim, and the film was rightly nominated for 3 Academy Awards in writing, editing, and cinematography. However, popularity with critics failed to translate to the box office, with the movie ultimately grossing just $70 million against a $76 million budget. That ain't good. That poor box office performance still couldn't stop it from ultimately becoming an absolute modern classic though. Number 8, Scott Pilgrim vs. the World. Based upon Brian Lee O'Malley's hit indie comic book, Scott Pilgrim already had a dedicated following. And with comic book movie adaptations making huge business at the box office, picking up one of the coolest IPs on the indie comic scene was a no-brainer for studio execs. Soon after it was optioned, the fantastic Edgar Wright became attached to direct, and it honestly seemed like a match made in movie studio heaven. And in terms of the movie itself, it was. Scott Pilgrim vs. the World is a brilliant blend of video game-inspired comedy, with a wonderfully dry sense of humor combined with over-the-top fantastical action. It's one of the most unique movies to have ever come out, and garnered much critical and audience praise upon release. Unfortunately, however, the film failed to light the box office on fire, only grossing $47.7 million at the worldwide box office on a $60 million budget. Fortunately though, its positive reception with online film fans means it has since obtained a cult following, and became a massive hit on home media. Well deserved, I say. Is this your favourite Edgar Wright movie of all time? Well, if it's not, you let me know what is in the comment section down below. Number 7, Donnie Darko. Strange, creepy, and intoxicating. Donnie Darko has been a favourite of film students and movie fans for over 20 years now. Gotta feel old. There is a lot to be analysed in here, and the cryptic sci-fi fantasy story combined with elements of psychological thriller has held the attention of movie buffs since it was released, and is still known as one of the great Jake Gyllenhaal's most iconic roles. However, despite the cult status the film now enjoys, the movie did initially bomb at the box office, only grossing $2.9 million on its original release against a $4.5 million budget. Yikes. It was even lucky to be released at all, really. It almost went straight to DVD, as director Richard Kelly stated it took almost 6 months to actually sell the film. In the end, the film at least turned out to be a hit in UK cinemas, and subsequently became a cult hit on VHS and DVD. Cult hits everywhere on this list, baby. Number 6, The Iron Giant. Brad Bird's deeply personal Iron Giant was met with overwhelming critical success upon release. The Los Angeles Times dubbed it a classic even though it's just out of the box, and the New Yorker hailed it as a modern fairy tale. How lovely. Many critics praised its skillful animation and its blend of a simplistic story with sophisticated themes. Due to the poor box office performance of Warner Brothers' previous animated film, The Arthurian Quest for Camelot, though, the studio had little confidence in the Iron Giant's box office prospects, and as a result, they committed few resources to its marketing budget. They neglected to arrange fast food and cereal tie-ins, which were a staple of 90s animated films, and even only produced one teaser poster, which then unsurprisingly became its official poster. After the film reputedly received the highest test screening scores they'd received in the last 15 years, the studio realized their mistake, but it was too late at that point, the silly sausages. The film was released to wide acclaim but little fanfare, and grossed a criminally low $31.1 million against an estimated $50 million budget. Number 5, Zodiac. Zodiac is, of course, David Fincher's adaptation of the compelling, harrowing story of the Zodiac Killer. from the perspective of journalist Robert Graysmith, played by that man again, Jake Gyllenhaal, who works at the San Francisco Chronicle. Unspooling one of the biggest mysteries in criminal history, Fincher crafts a deft psychological thriller, as Graysmith strives to uncover the identity of the killer with or without help from the police. The film was praised upon release for its writing, directing, acting, and historical authenticity, and in 2016 was voted by the BBC as 12th out of 100 films considered to be the very best of the 21st century so far. And this was voted by 117 journalists from around the globe. And though not a complete disaster by any means, the film did perform poorly at the box office, grossing $84.8 million against a $65 million budget. And this Fincher classic just deserves so much better than that. Thank you very much for checking out this video today, my friend. Now go and hit that subscribe button down below for more of this what culture stuff in your day. Number 4, Everybody Wants Some. A slightly more recent and perhaps lesser known film than others on this list, Everybody Wants Some is a college comedy set in 1980s Texas from director Richard Linklater. Hailed as a spiritual successor to Linklater's stoner comedy classic Dazed and Confused, it tells the story of college freshman Jake Bradford, who moves into an off-campus house with his new teammates on the college baseball team. Set in the week before the start of the semester, we follow Jake as he goes out partying with his new teammates, making new friends and getting into antics along the way. It has the same leisurely haze that makes Dazed and Confused so special, but with an added dose of nostalgia. In a way, it feels more like hanging out with friends than watching a film. And who wouldn't want to do that for a few hours, eh? Well, a lot of people, that's why it's unfortunately on this list. Making this film, Linklater was just coming off the back of Boyhood, which stormed awards season and became the hottest indie movie of the whole damn year. As such, expectation was very high for Everybody Wants Some, and although the film was met with much critical praise and positive audience scores, the film flopped in the end, grossing a disappointing $4.6 million against a $10 million budget. What a bummer. Number 3, It's a Wonderful Life. Bombing at the box office isn't an exclusively modern phenomena. As this next entry will show, perhaps one of the most famous Christmas movies of all time. This black and white holiday classic was actually a big old flop when it was first released in post-war America. Facing stiff competition at the box office, It's a Wonderful Life was met with a lukewarm reception from critics and audiences alike. At the time, James Stewart was one of the world's biggest movie stars, having starred in box office hits such as Mr. Smith Goes to Washington and The Philadelphia Story, which also earned him an Academy Award for Best Actor. However, in 1941, Stewart became the first major American movie star to enlist in the United States Army to fight in World War II. He soon joined the Air Corps and even piloted B-24 bombers over Germany in 1944. That is impressive. But importantly, for his film career at least, Stewart made no commercial films while enlisted in the armed forces. Would have been pretty difficult. Upon his return to America at the conclusion of the war in 1945, Stewart almost considered leaving the movie business altogether. However, he was persuaded by his old friend, director Frank Capra, to star in his new film, It's a Wonderful Life. The film was seen as the return of Stewart to the Hollywood landscape, and box office hopes resided on Stewart's star power not having diminished, having been absent from the silver screen for 5 years. Despite an ambitious and expensive production though, the film only grossed $3.3 million against a $3.1 million budget. A big ol' loss for a Hollywood studio of that time. Number 2, Citizen Kane. It's hard to imagine that one of the most, if not the most celebrated, praised and revered films of all time flopped at the box office. But for our next entry, that is the truth, people. Citizen Kane is Orson Welles' magnum opus and a true giant among cinematic classics. Considered by many filmmakers, critics, and fans to be the greatest film ever made. It is a classic rise and fall tale of absolute power corrupting absolutely, as we follow Kane on his journey from ambitious newspaper owner to his eventual fall into megalomania, pioneering many cinematic techniques in cinematography and editing, such as depth of field and match cuts. The film was met with universal acclaim and praised for its technical achievements, as well as its groundbreaking story, being nominated for 9 Oscars and even bagging Welles along with co-writer Herman Mankiewicz an Academy Award for Best Writing. But although the exact numbers aren't really known, It is known to have lost at least $160,000 during its initial run in theaters, cementing its place in history as a cinematic great but a box office flop. And number 1, The Shawshank Redemption. The film that's on perhaps more my favorite movies ever list than any other. The Shawshank Redemption is an icon of 90s cinema, and one of those movies you just can't help but keep watching anytime it's airing on TV. Oh, we've all been there. The classic story of Andy Dufresne being locked up in the notorious Shawshank State Penitentiary for a murder he did not commit. And his eventual redemption has had a surprising impact, to say what little box office success it achieved. On its original release, it only grossed just over $28 million against a $25 million budget. Directed by Frank Darabont, Shawshank was received well critically though, being nominated for 7 Academy Awards in acting, writing, cinematography, editing, and sound categories. And luckily, due to word of mouth, the film picked up steam on VHS and sold 320,000 copies, eventually becoming a constant listing on television all around the world. Now, not all of the films on this list made their money back, of course. Some got lucky, like Shawshank, and managed to recoup their costs on home media sales, but others haven't and likely won't. Luckily, they do still prove that films don't necessarily have to make money to be good, or even great.